going to this afternoon, pretty much saying, echoing everything else.
I just came in.
Tough.
Yeah.
No.
Two.
I think there's some confusion, Sioux Falls has a fund
If
set
at
up
any
where
time you need to. Yeah.
people with businesses and all that can actually make claims and some money can be doled out. There's over $1 million in the fund right now.
That also included the rent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yep. Interesting. David, you know, of course, one version, the other version,
One version.
version one version.
Oh,
I didn't, yeah, I guess there's some, they were always on this guy. What'd you get, can I get some?
I know Sioux Falls,
Following up.
press conference today, I think he's going to something that
As
outlines.
exciting as it is. He's a sharp dresser, isn't
He is.
he? Stan Jean.
Does that make you feel like?
Do you need to step up your game there?
I don't like him like him.
our economic group statewide has been talking on some of this stuff, but not for the business.
Ron, do you have trouble getting in your file?
No, just one,
Okay.
got a United report for that.
This is community outside of New York City, like within the metropolitan station. And it's 25,000 people, and they, it's like, very well, very free. Very, very. You know this was actually good. Maybe that one is a single candidate, there's a word for it. I look it up, it was top. I'm saying, yeah, it's pretty well. As though, it's just locations without descriptions. Name is town. Five thirty, we'll call to order this meeting from special city council on March 20th, 2020. Carl, give me a roll call, vote, please.
Councilmember Rimley. Here. Ronayne.
Here.
Lunsman.
Here.
Rife. Here. Johnson. Here. Bundsmith.
Present.
Olson.
Here.
Rux.
Here.
Mayor Sean.
Here, please stand with me for the pledge of allegiance.
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business is new business discussion around the possible first reading of emergency ordinance regarding the novel coronavirus COVID-19 public health crisis. Ron, pick it up. Can you tell us about the version?
Thank you, Mayor. I had provided yesterday to each of the council members two versions of an ordinance regarding the COVID crisis. As I had promised the council, the two versions represent two different styles. One is, the first version one that you're seeing on the screen right now is the version that we're seeing several of the municipalities starting to pass around the state. The South Dakota Retailers Association has recently put out a kind of a status update on what's a lot of cities are doing, but we know that Rapid City, Yankton, Watertown, Mitchell, Huron, others have adopted an ordinance that runs along the lines of what you're seeing on the screen here. That ordinance does require closures of certain of the businesses identified in the ordained portion of the ordinance. Paragraphs 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then number 5 identifies what is not being closed. And then version 2, version 2 is a version that I drafted following Governor Noem's Executive Order 2020-08 that was issued Monday late afternoon. And that has similar language in the recitals portion, but you'll see in paragraphs 1 and 2 have been modified to hew more closely, in my opinion, to the executive order of Governor Noem. What I would like to do before we get into a discussion of this is clarify for the council what I think our responsibility will be here as we, if we formalize something tonight. Typically, we are able to post with the agenda 24 hours in advance an agenda packet that would include a draft of a proposed ordinance so that the public would have an opportunity to review it and offer any comments and attend. I did not initially include these draft ordinances in when I sent this off and when it was posted, so these draft ordinances were only made to the public just this morning. So we're gonna take the unusual step, I think, that if, in the event that we do, well, we do actually have one member of the public here that I can pick up, a few others, but I would request that if in fact we are in a position where we are looking at a first reading of the ordinance, the mayor would ask the members of the public if they would like it actually verbally read out loud, or if they would be satisfied with the copies that we provided for everybody in advance at the meeting. So I just want to keep that in mind as
You're
we're going
talking
through
about
this.
two present members of
Yeah,
the public.
yeah. That you would ask the members if they would care to have it read out loud, or if we can essentially dispense with reading and just move forward with any final action of the council on any adoption for first reading of any ordinance tonight. So,
Can I just interrupt? I would suggest that we would do it anyway, whatever version we kind of land on, that it would be read
okay.
for the public that's watching and for the people that are here.
So, and again,
Let's just do it, because it's a
agree.
pretty important issue.
Yeah, we should do that because we haven't been able to do the traditional public notice that we would do in ordinary circumstances. So, with that, I would like to walk through the two versions at this time with the council and explain the effect of each, and then I would back off and let you folks decide how you want to approach this. So we're looking here at we'll start with version 1. And I guess what I will tell is that the beginning portions of it, the whereas portions we call the recitals. And the recitals are what we are seeing typically throughout all these other ordinances within the state, but what they're doing is they're identifying, number one, the state of emergency, both national and South Dakota's declaration of emergency, identifying that there presently exists a need for an emergency ordinance that affects the life, health, property, or public peace, lays out the COVID virus disease itself and the potential deleterious impacts it has on human health, identifies the actions of various organizations, World Health Organization, Center for Disease Control, Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health regarding the outbreak, and of course the declarations by both President Trump and Governor Noem of the state of emergency. And then the recitals go on to identify that social distancing is the method that the CDC and health experts are recommending to help slow the spread of the virus. And identifies that many states and communities are implementing the CD recommendations by ordering closure of bars, restaurants, food courts, similar establishments. That many Aberdeen residents have voluntarily instituted social distancing measures, and I want to point out to the any viewing audience that we have here, we have tried as best we can to space the council members within that 6 feet. We've taken measures here in the room to have the public seating spaced at the 6 feet recommendation, so that we aren't in and of ourselves in violation of the CDC guidance at this point. And so the recitals then devolved down to a final exercise of the city council's authority by state law and under its charter to enact an emergency ordinance and to take measures to address the public health crisis. Beginning at paragraph 1 then, of version 1 of the ordinance, we see again what many of the other cities in the state are doing. They begin, number 1, with a closure of establishments like restaurants, bars, cafes, other similar places of public accommodation where they offer food and beverage for on-site consumption. And they are closing the on-site sale and consumption of these establishments. They're allowing these businesses to operate, to provide takeout, delivery, curbside, drive service, and drive-through service. Then it says also that any business that does operate those services should ensure social distancing and operate in compliance with federal and state health guidance. Number 2 also discusses the closure of recreational facilities, pools, health and fitness facilities, and clubs, social clubs, fraternal organizations, and other types of facilities for mass gatherings, including music entertainment venues and theaters. And they're directed to close and cease operations. Paragraph 3 deals with tobacco shops, lounges, hookah lounges, similar businesses, directed to cease allowing on-site consumption, but may continue to offer products for sale to consume off-site under the same conditions. Number 4 closes and ceases operations for pool halls, video game arcades, video lottery, casino operations, bowling alleys, ice skating rinks, and other similar indoor recreational or entertainment facilities. Paragraph 5 then permits the continued activities of places of public accommodation that offer food and beverages for off-site consumption, like grocery stores, convenience stores, drug stores, food pantries, and other similar businesses. And permits the continuation of room service in hotels, continuation of healthcare facilities, residential care facilities, congregate care facilities, and correctional facilities. Permits the continued operation of crisis shelters, homeless shelters, churches, soup kitchens, and other similar institutions, and any emergency facility necessary for the response. So then, those are the provisions for closure and for exceptions to closure. The next paragraph was requested by the mayor and Councilman Bunceness for, which would require continued and vigilance on the part of the council to assess the continued necessity of the ordinance by sunsetting it on the day after any regular or special meeting. And I would offer at this time that where you see my cursor, where it says shall be repealed on the day following a regular or special meeting, I would request that be changed to each regular or special meeting. So basically, every single regular or special meeting that the council would have during this crisis, and for the next 60 days, if this is the enactment of it, you would be required to pass a resolution affirming both the continued existence of the public health emergency and the necessity of the social distancing measures set forth in paragraphs 1 through 4 above. So what that means is that this council would need to affirmatively act at every council meeting to have this discussion continue to weigh the necessity of the ordinance and by resolution, extend it till the day after the next regular or special council meeting. And you can do that up to a total of 60 days, and on the 61st day, because this is an emergency ordinance, it would automatically be repealed. That would allow, if the crisis continues and these measures are necessary, the council would then have to enact a new ordinance to continue these. It gives the ordinance a little teeth by putting the violations as a Class 2 misdemeanor. And then lastly, it recites the requirement for a ordinance under these conditions as to preserve the public peace, health, or safety. So that was version 1, quickly and in a nutshell. Version 2, excuse me, has the exact same recitals, but however is changed in a significant way based upon the governor's executive order. And paragraph 1 says that any enclosed retail business operating as a bar, restaurant, brewery, cafe, casino, coffee shop, recreational or athletic facility, health club, entertainment venue, or other similar place for public gatherings shall A, not permit 10 or more people to be in the enclosed facility where there is not sufficient space to have physical separation of at least 6 feet between persons who are not immediate family members or members of the same household, and B, discontinues business practices incompatible with CDC hygiene practices designed to reduce the likelihood of spreading the COVID-19 disease. So let me explain that, and I'm going to send the council to the actual executive order. This is Governor Noem's executive order. Can you see that? Okay. And paragraph 11 discusses enclosed retail business that promotes public gatherings. So that language that I just read to you is basically taken out of her executive order. And that executive order says that that any enclosed retail business that promotes public gatherings shall suspend or modify business practices as recommended by CDC guidance that involve 10 or more people to be in an enclosed space where physical separation of at least 6 feet is not possible. So that is where that language is coming from. I should also inform the council that the caveat I made here is that between persons who are not immediate family members or members of the same household, because those folks have already been exposed to the same risk that the other person has. So what that means is that, we'll just use an example, if a restaurant were to remain open and provide in-room dining, you could have a family seated at a table, because they've all been exposed to one another, so they're fine as to each other. But they can't be within, they have to have a 6 feet separation from any other person who is not a member of that family or member of that household. And then the ordinance as I drafted says that you must discontinue business practices incompatible with CDC hygiene practices. And Councilman Remley mentioned on Monday that we had some bars that were taking out the popcorn machines and the barrels of peanuts. Those would be very good practices to do, because those would be inconsistent with CDC guidance for hygiene practices. So that is language that, again, is coming out of Governor Noem's executive order. And it then goes on to say that these businesses are encouraged to adopt and promote practices that do not involve public gatherings in an enclosed space, including but not limited to takeout, delivery, drive-through, curbside service, and off-site services. And those, again, that language again is right off of paragraph 12 of her executive order. Any enclosed retail business that promotes public gatherings shall implement procedures to ensure social distancing and operate in compliance with federal and state health guidance. Lastly, these businesses may submit such procedures to the city health officer for review. And the reason for that is that under paragraph 18, the city is directed to review the business practices of each enclosed retail business that promotes public gatherings. So we're trying through this language to navigate the various requirements of Executive Order 2020-08. Number 2 is part of the paragraph 17 of her order, which requires local governments to restrict public gatherings of 10 people more unless it is necessary. So we have paragraph 2 that says that any public gathering of 10 or more people is prohibited where there is not sufficient space to have physical separation. So we use the same language that we had earlier. To the extent that there's a public event where you have 10 or more people coming together and they cannot have the space, whether it's one of these identified businesses or not, they're not able to continue to have that public gathering. Paragraph 3 is just a recitation of what we saw in the first version for organizations, groups, activities, and businesses that are not impacted by this requirement. And then, again, the same language for the sunsetting as an active measure by the council. So those, very quickly, are the two differences between the two ordinances. And I wanted to say again that in either version, I would request that the word "a" in the second sentence of the provision regarding repealing be changed to "each," so it has to each regular or special meeting of the city council. I believe that what I can tell you about version 2 is that I don't believe that any other city in the state is dealing with a version like 2, because they haven't, I don't know that they were already in the process of already adopted ordinances prior to the executive order being delivered to the public. So version 2 that we have there would be unique to Aberdeen. We'll see what other cities are doing. I can tell you that we know that a number of other cities have adopted the ordinance that's much more closely aligned to version 1. We also have a number of cities that are kind of holding in place and urging businesses to follow the directive issued by Governor Nome. So that would be my presentation on these two ordinances at this time.
Thank you, Ron, and thanks for the quick work on it. I know that you were directed to do this just Monday of this week, and as fast as I've seen you whip together two ordinances. So I think, first and foremost, I think it's important that everyone realize that we are taking seriously the welfare of the people and also the importance of the small business community. I think that we need to commend the voluntary cooperation of most of the small businesses in this community. In fact, when I was speaking to the mayor of Brookings, they didn't even need to produce one of these because they have 100% voluntary compliance, and we're awfully close to that here at this stage in the game with a couple of new additions today. I also think that we should thank the people of the community for so carefully following the guidelines and recommendations of both the CDC and the state, because it's through those efforts that a lot of this stuff isn't even necessary. Most people in this community are doing exactly what they need to do to help prevent the spread of this virus through our city. So I'm going to open it up to comments from other council members that we might have.
I would just ask that we settle on a version before we get into comments.
That's a good idea.
And I would recommend version 2. It's less, I have an issue with closing down businesses, as version 1 states. But I'm much more comfortable with giving businesses the opportunity to comply with what the governor has told us is acceptable practices.
Right, and I think that that's exactly my take on it as well. Mandates that businesses temporarily modify their practices to follow state guidelines, and I think that that's what most have already chosen to do voluntarily. I think that allowing some of these guys, especially the ones that are catering to very, very small audiences, and are probably just hanging on the verge of financial collapse. Especially, I think we need to, take consideration into the fact that those folks I'll have plenty of space to allow for the proper social distancing and so forth. So I agree, version 2, can we get a straw poll on that? Why don't, make it official, push it to the
I will
second
move
version.
version 2.
Should we have that read specifically the ordinance number? Because there are some confusing numbers there, so that we're clear.
Okay, I move ordinance number 20-0302, COVID-19 emergency ordinance number 1
For discussion.
for discussion.
A motion from Bunsen and a second from Wright, all in
That
favor?
would be first reading of
Okay.
that version.
A motion from Dave and second from Josh. Councilman Romaine.
You know, it might be early to,
Rob,
sir,
microphone.
it's on, but this is Renling's, so I don't know.
I speak louder.
And does karaoke.
I'll pull it closer. I would like to move a very technical amendment to it. Ron, I think the date that you're showing this to be effective is March 1, and you were presuming we would have a first reading on yesterday and a second reading next Tuesday. And so I think I would move to amend the effective date to April 2. I think that's in the first, paragraph of the actual.
So first reading would be March 25th.
I can ask the council to please disregard what's in brackets.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the dates of the first reading and so forth. Within the body, you have the effective date.
Oh, do I?
Yes, sir.
Where is that? I'm sorry.
It says effective 12:01 a.m. Wednesday, April 1st.
Oh.
Is that what
Also
you're-
in brackets.
I put that in brackets as well, because I wasn't sure. As we walk through this process, we can, if in fact you do it tonight, then I can pull up a calendar for you so we can plug in dates there.
Okay, so we don't need the dates in as far as you're concerned.
At some point here in this process, we should amend it to have the proper dates, and do we want to do that right now?
That was my motion.
Okay. So, and I'll.
Second. Once we get the dates.
I have a motion from Rob and a second from Clint in order to establish firm dates on the language throughout the ordinance to April 2nd. I also want to clarify my understanding of the way that the sunset component of this works is at the end of a meeting on Monday, Tuesday would be discontinued if this thing isn't again voted for, but a special meeting could be called midweek in order to end it at a time that would seem appropriate if a Monday wasn't going to seem soon enough. It's important to me that businesses are able to go back to business as usual as quickly as possible.
Without using the ability to call special meetings, that's correct, Mayor. You could call a special meeting for the sole purpose of having the meeting not to pass a resolution. And that would mean that the day following that meeting, this would be repealed.
Right. I wanted to clarify that point. Thank you, Rob. Does anyone else have any questions or thoughts?
Do we vote on the amendment?
Just on the amendment, I think we're gonna, I got another amendment.
Sounds good. We've got a motion from Rob and a second from Clint. Carl, give me or actually, all in favor, please say aye for that amendment to the dates.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Does carry. Dave, what is your suggestion?
Well, I think we need to include the word each regular or special meeting under the be further ordained. I think Ron had requested that, and I failed to do that in the main motion.
Second.
There's been a motion from Bunsen and a second from Rux. All in favor, please say aye. Add the word each to replace the word a with each in the last paragraph before the word regular.
May I ask for one more change here? I would direct the council to the "and" here in paragraph 2, where it says that effective that public gathering of 10 or more people is prohibited, A, where there is not sufficient space to have physical separation, and where CDC hygiene practices to reduce the likelihood of spreading are not maintained. I think that should be or,
I agree.
and I made that mistake, and
I'll include that in my amendment.
I'll include it in my second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Make that amendment carried. Does anyone else have anything to add? Mr. Bill?
I guess I have a question for Ron. I've read this numerous times, and it just occurred to me now, reading it again. Do daycares fall under congregate care facilities, which is listed under 3C? Or do we want to not include daycare?
Well, those are exceptions, right?
Yes.
I do believe that those should be accepted out of it.
I just wanna make sure if it's under congregate care, if that's how it's classified, fine, or if we need to specifically state daycare.
Right. I don't think that it would hurt.
my recommendation is to put it in specifically.
Sure.
We would say, both licensed and all licensed daycares.
Yeah, that's right.
Licensed daycare,
I'll
whether
make
by
that
the state.
amendment.
Second. A motion from Bunceness and a second from Lunsman to add the word, or the phrase licensed daycares to exception 5C.
I just got a text message that says we are off the TV now that basketball is playing.
Priority.
Me too.
My question with licensed daycares, would they still have to follow the requirements of 10 or less? Because we do have large daycare centers here in Aberdeen, or would we just, like I say?
We're just saying that if you're a licensed daycare, you are exempted from this prohibition.
Okay,
You would still move forward as usual, and I understand our director, Bill, has informed licensed daycares that they can double their
Mhm.
permitted numbers at this time. From 12 to 24, I believe.
You made that decision last week, didn't you?
is that legal with the state?
The state has not objected at all to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, with no further discussion, why don't,
Can we?
Sorry. It sure is, what have you
Hold
got?
on, excuse me.
Yeah, the
I just want-
amendment is open for discussion,
Let's say,
not the whole word.
is all of this, the licensed daycare, the H, is that all part of your amendment?
Clerk?
We already voted on the
Right.
each
Each,
and or amendment. This is a separate
Oh, yeah,
amendment. Each
yes,
will be voted
you're
on.
right. I apologize.
need to clear this one up, sorry.
Yes.
So we vote to second amendment.
So I'll take a motion to add the phrase licensed daycares to, we did that, didn't we?
Yeah.
So you
I
did
got
that.
that.
Yeah, we have it.
We just need a vote.
I seconded.
It's my first day. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
No,
I will vote my own aye, the motion does carry with one dissenting vote. Any other discussion on the ordinance itself as it stands with the amendments made before us here in this meeting? Did you have something for that, Councilman Knowles?
I do. I'm not in favor of this version, for probably a few reasons. Number one, I think it would be very difficult to enforce. I think we're showing too much leniency for the seriousness of this event. And so I'm very much in favor of closing these establishments rather than having us try to police them to see if they're maintaining social distancing or keeping their groups to less than 10. And so I'm just not in favor of this version, and I would much rather support version 2, where we are closing these establishments that are at risk to the public.
Councilman Ronay.
thank you, Mike, I appreciate your comments, and I agree that this is a very important issue. We've got had conversations here about protecting businesses, but the purpose of these ordinances are to protect the public. We've got people who are going to die, probably people who are going to die here in Aberdeen, South Dakota. We've got a duty to our constituents to protect them. And that's why I brought this up last week, that we needed to move forward with an ordinance. I'm gonna support this one. I'm not, you and I are not far away in looking at this, Mike. I'm gonna support this. But, I'm supporting it with an understanding that and partly, I think that we'll close those businesses. I don't see how a bar, a restaurant, a casino, most of these facilities can operate in a manner consistent with the governor's directions. But if in fact we don't see the closings that we expect, I'll be back here asking that we amend this ordinance and adopt something much more closely aligned with the other version. But I think it's important that we enact something that is going to protect our citizens, and I'm willing to give this a chance.
Thank you for your input. Councilman Ronay, any other comments? Mark, what have you got for us?
I've been on the phone for 2 days straight, and I'm conflicted. I don't want to close businesses down, and businesses don't want to be closed down. I mean, forced to. I'll read to what Ron mentioned to me, or mentioned about me bringing up what bars were doing in order to comply with the Governor Noem's outline. Okay. They are doing things to help prevent the spread. We always do an awesome job of cleaning, but we've stepped that up as well as removing our popcorn, peanuts, free pizza, canceling our weekly karaoke. We are checking employee temperatures before they come to work, move chairs out of the bar to distance people, and have made our dine-in specials available for to-go orders. Out of an abundance of caution, we have also switched our drinks over to plastic cups instead of our typical glass. And there are other bars that want to comply with that as well. And there's also people out there, casinos, that say we need a complete shutdown. I mean, there's so many conflicting opinions. I've been everywhere, and I don't know if I can vote for either one of these, to tell you the truth. This really shouldn't be our job. I don't think we get paid enough to do this. I mean, this should come from higher up, and I'm too close to it. It's bothered me. And there's just too many conflicts out there. I don't want to close people. I don't want to close business down. But I also want to reserve the right to discipline those that don't follow the rules. So, like Rob says, leave it open for an amendment later. I think we should maybe give the people that have already closed an opportunity to open up again, so that they can try and get their crowds back, try and get their people back, to a certain extent, of course. It needs to be fair. It needs to be fair to everybody. And casinos with over like 40 machines, I mean, is that going to be a problem? I mean, is that, because most casinos have 10, that's the maximum, but there are casinos that have multiple licenses, like 40. So, is that going to be fair to them, to have them shut down because there's 40 machines?
So Mark, I guess in order to follow what your intentions are, it sounds like you're kind of torn between if you want everybody to close or nobody to close.
Very much so. I'm conflicted, and I'm too close to these people they're my people. I mean,
The positive out of what I'm taking from what you're saying is that most of the businesses that you've spoken to have done very proactive things to help with the spread of this illness. And I've actually spoken to a few of the same people that you've spoken to recently, because they brought up that you had just left. It was like chasing you around town almost. And it sounded like I'd heard a lot of the same things. People were trying to do what they could. Closure was kind of an obvious, decision for some of them, but not so much for others, because it was a little bit easier for those people to comply, or they were just getting less pressure.
we already had one casualty. I mean, Jersey's is done forever. They were just starting to build a clientele, and it was getting better. But with this happening, the owner just says, nah, I don't wanna do that. It breaks my heart, because I was.
Well, regardless of how anyone feels about the illness itself, I think we can all kind of agree that we're on kind of an upward trajectory with cases right now. So this is about as important of a time as ever for us to be controlling the spread. So I'm hoping that we'll be out of the woods with this before long, and that would be probably a more appropriate time for the businesses that have intentionally chosen to close to reopen their doors rather than immediately. Most of the problem that we're looking to solve has already kind of solved itself. We're just looking at the smaller pieces of the puzzle right now.
Well, yesterday I was convinced that it was gonna be okay. Today it was different. I mean, it's a moving target. I don't know what to do. I mean, I'm like I said, I'm conflicted, and I don't know what to do.
And then in answer, from the understanding that I took from your second question about the video lottery machines, we're primarily concerned with the number of people and the cleanliness of these operations. If all 40 machines are being used, it's quite likely that they aren't exercising the appropriate spacing. But perhaps if the small businesses that I spoke to that would be affected by this were kind of asking me those type of technicalities. And I said, you're gonna have to identify how many people you're looking at, and you're gonna have to be manning your door and insisting no more come in. That's your responsibility. If you start to break these rules immediately, people like the members of this council are going to make it more severe.
So are you saying that if someone has 40 machines, they can only have 10 people?
It'll be a pretty easy formula, I think, for the most part. There's a 6-foot separation.
That's right.
There's a radius around a person. There's a square footage of a location. I mean,
Well,
fairly
there's
certain
plenty of
got all
square
that.
footage. There's plenty of square footage in these places.
You know.
So, yeah, I got one person saying this, I got one person saying this, and I'm torn.
I think you're no different than, I believe, anyone else on this council. This is a situation that we never thought that we would be in.
It's not our job. I mean, we don't get paid enough to do this. I mean, this should come from higher up. in my opinion.
But we are the ones who are getting paid to do it.
I think we have a responsibility. If someone from higher up is not going to make the decision,
You're
then
right.
we have that responsibility.
That sucks.
But in our state, we're actually very fortunate, I would say, that we aren't getting on-time mandates that are insisting that we have the same.
We have to make the decision to change people's lives. I mean, is that what you signed up for?
Well, we've done it, been here 15 years, we've done this in my tenure, we've done it a few times, where it's not a virus, it's some other thing that comes up that we have to make a decision on people's livelihood. So, I don't think anyone else is feeling any different than you are. You are closer to the situation. I have a client that has voluntarily closed because of the obligation that they felt to their employees and to their clients. And
I know who that is.
yeah, and so, you have to appreciate that. Those people
That's
are
correct.
thinking bigger than just themselves. And
There
so-
are others, though, that are struggling, and
I know.
they'll die. I mean, they won't
Mark,
survive.
I would honestly tell you, from having digested both of these things, that version 2 might be a pretty good, between the people
Alternative.
volunteering voluntarily closing and allowing the little guys to kind of continue to scrape on by. I think that version 2 might allow you to achieve both of those missions. Councilman Wright.
I think the thing that I'm struggling with a bit, has to do with what Councilman Romaine said previously. And that is, if we pass the version 2, and then there's not voluntary following, and we need to get stricter, then we can become stricter. I think in this scenario, it's kind of, I'm tempted to say we should take the opposite approach and start stricter, and then ease that up after, say, a 2-week period. Because from what I understand about this virus, the sooner we can stop the spread, the better. If we just slow, even if some are compliant and some aren't compliant in the process, then what we're doing will have no effect. So I'm tempted to look at these versions and say, well, maybe we take the stricter approach first, with the idea that we plan on revisiting this every week, or when we can go to the less strict. So you can have your doors open, just keep people 6 feet apart, but initially, in my mind, it almost makes more sense to take the version 1 more seriously, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of that at this point in time. I think people have a personal responsibility to take care of themselves. And I would want to give our business owners every chance to step up and survive through this period of
I
time.
get that. I completely understand. I'm just saying, if everyone complies except 2 or except 3, then we're gonna be in the exact same spot, and maybe that's fine.
Mark, how many active bars would you estimate are running in town, since you've got such a good pulse on it?
There's only 2 open now. I mean, since the closure of Mavericks and Pounders, the only ones that are still open are Rollies and the RNA.
And just to clarify, Ron, and on version 1, we're not closing the business down. They can still do the curbside and the drive-through and the carry-out and all that sort of business, correct?
RNA wouldn't have anything to offer in that
Right.
category. Councilman Olson, have you got something to add?
Well, of course, I agree with Josh, in respect to, starting out with closures and revisiting if necessary. You know, I've had numerous emails today and yesterday, and other councilmen have as well. I've spoke to them, and there wasn't one that was in favor of keeping these businesses open. In fact, they were adamant about the council closing these businesses, because the emphasis shouldn't be on businesses or the economic impact of our community. We have to focus on the health of our community. Try to save as many lives as we can. And that's why I want to send a clear message to the public that we're taking a serious look at this, and our health is more important than the dollars right now.
Sure. I know the word that's getting thrown around a lot lately is unprecedented. It's almost like people memorized it specifically for this. And I'm gonna have to remind everybody here that it's unprecedented for this city to take a business that hasn't done anything wrong in and of themselves and step on their throat. So that's the type of unprecedented activity that I think we need to be careful of. I think most people in this community are doing the right thing. I think we need to continue to encourage that. I think this will take, hopefully stem off the remaining people that are just entirely disregarding the guidance from the CDC and the state. I think it does plenty enough, and it doesn't put blood on our hands for the businesses. I know that there's a genuine concern that there will be a spread of this virus to a great extent. We've got 2 cases here on the books. Should it double or triple, we're looking at 4 or 6 cases. When people are throwing around terms like people will die out of this, I think that we should maybe curtail that sort of diatribe a little bit. Clint, what have you got?
And I think no one here wants to close a business down. will this happen with this? Those businesses that are already on the edge, this may push them over the edge a little sooner than they probably would have. The thing is you have to realize, we had one case, now we have two. If you start following the trends, this could quite easily become more than 5. Once you're at 5, you're at community spread under CDC guidelines. Well, once you hit the 5th.
We're at 4.
Yeah. Oh, we're at 4 now? Yeah, so we're already almost to the point where Sioux Falls, where all of a sudden it looked like Sioux Falls was gonna manage, and they get a jump in 8. And if you follow the Department of Health models, 30% of South Dakotans could get this virus. That's just under 9,000 people in this community. And we need to do something to stop the spread, and if we do it now, we can shut it down quicker, and we can get back to normal a lot sooner than if we hang on. We're already behind the 8 ball. This is going into effect a week, possibly from today. Many communities are ahead, and especially Sioux Falls and Rapid City are at least a week ahead. So we're already behind on this. And, you know, I'm to the point where it doesn't really matter what version passes, we need to pass something and evaluate it continuously like we have been. And keep working. If something isn't working, we need to tweak it. If we need to go strict, let's go strict. It's just one of those things, we need to do something now. So we can get back to business much quicker than if we hold off.
Thank you, Clint. I'm a strong no vote on the first one, if we're just going to take kind of a straw poll here. I'm curious to hear if a lot of people agree or have it sounded like there was a strong aversion towards the second version right out of the gates.
I think we got a motion.
Yeah, we already have a
That would be the telltale.
No. All right, is there any more discussion before we take the vote on version 2?
I think we're coming back on a weekly basis, and maybe even quicker than that. And I think we can react to the current events.
I think that's fair.
I have a question, if I may, for the city attorney. If we come back on Wednesday at a special meeting, and we amend this language to enact the other version, would that be a change that would require an additional meeting?
That would be a substantive change that would require an additional 5 days between the next reading or the next final passage.
Can't hear you.
I'm sorry. That would be an additional 5 days because due to a substantial alteration.
Well, if I may, I would just tell you my position. I quite honestly, Josh's conversation and Mike's conversation have somewhat persuaded me. I kind of am now, I'm switching my position. I think I would rather start with the other version and ease off. And Clint, I'm not sure if that's where you are. Mark, I'm not sure if that's where you are. And we haven't heard from Dave Lunsman, but
Dave, did you have your hand up
I
there?
would see something substituted.
I'm happy either way. If we wanna go stricter, I'm happy with that too, and then we can always ease stuff off. You can ease it off quicker. At the same point, I just wanna get something passing as quickly as possible so we can get our hand on this and start moving things in the right direction, rather than waiting for things to get out of hand.
I'm conflicted a little bit in I'm listening to everybody and I'm trying to make up my mind here, but my question would be, we're talking, if we take the stricter approach, there's, we say there's currently 3 businesses that would affect? Because the other ones have already.
We aren't, we asked about bars, I don't know about casinos, so there's possibly a number more.
Okay, I was trying to quantify here, because most of the restaurants have already closed, and bars have already closed.
And I think that there's also restaurants that have inside dining, I know that for a fact.
And they try to maintain 6 feet, and,
Okay.
you know, if someone shows up, what are you gonna do? If you don't have room, you're gonna tell them to go away.
Yeah.
I drove by a couple places last night that were still open, and there wasn't great social distancing.
Right, and Pounders, I think,
They
was one
did.
that I was getting a lot of flack for. And
They
I
did it.
spoke to Craig and he voluntarily chose to close. So that's been a remarkably effective tool. In fact, I've spoken with a lot of people. I think most of these people that own these businesses are trying to do the right thing. And I think that if people strongly felt like there wasn't the appropriate social distancing, I think people are making the necessary adjustments to accommodate that.
Councilman Johnson.
I understand the emotions of it. I really do. I have a lot of friends here and also in my workplace, which is on the East Coast, actually, as I work remotely. Great effects across all the states between here and there. But when you look at data that's available that predates this virus even before the January 20th recognition in the U.S., there are some key modeling studies that are useful, and I think if we realize that we put multiple social lockdowns in place that include things like school closures, that include the quarantine of infected family members, and then workplace distancing, that is proven to carry the day and to flatten that curve. I like the version that we've already proposed and have the second too, because it does allow a balance between economic pressures. It puts everyone in specific business categories on equal footing. There's equity there that allows them to continue to make a living, keep people employed where possible, while still addressing some of the health concerns. So I have a strong preference for having the latitude to let people make the good business decisions that have allowed them to be family-owned for decades. Those are smart people doing the best they can, and I think we should trust them and let them continue to operate in that way. I think this version does the best job of allowing that.
Thank you. Councilman Lenzman.
I think I agree with Mark the most. This is probably one of the worst things that we have to do, but I do disagree. It is our job to do this. If we allow this to go to a higher power, which may be a state or a federal, we then lose all control over what our businesses are. I'm not for that in any way, shape, or form. I think we need to take our own control, our own destiny, and model what we do for what's best for our community, not for what's good for Watertown, not what's good for Rapid City or Chicago or LA. We need to take care of our people. What Alan just mentioned, well, I've been back and forth on this, but I think we have to trust our business people somewhat. I think we have to let them do the best they can to survive through this. This is the best balance for me, and I'm going to support this because I think our business people are smart people, and they know what's best for themselves, for their employees, and what is best for their patrons, because if they don't take care of all of those, they're not going to be in business anyway. So for my vote will be for this version for those reasons.
Thank you, Dave. Councilman Johnson.
I was just gonna add, we've mentioned family-owned, but there are a number of franchised operations in our city too, and we've had the misfortune of having some of those close, those type of franchise businesses, not through lack of good customer care or revenues, but just because of corporate decisions. And I worry that if we put our heel on the neck of business strongly here, that we could see a domino effect, and I'm not interested in seeing that. I think we will get through this. I'm very confident we will. It'll be a period of weeks, and I think this is a smart move right here that just has just enough latitude that accomplishes our most important objectives.
We could still go stricter, correct, Ron? The thing is this would still be in place even if we feel we have to go stricter, and that went through that next set of channels.
That's correct. If that was the sentiment of the council, I would recommend that you pass the resolution approving this to keep it in place, and then at the same time then be doing a parallel track with a stricter one if that's the direction.
You mean both, pass both tonight?
No,
No.
pass the one tonight, and then if you wanted to at a later time bring in another, you could keep this one in place while you're going through the first and second reading of the other.
At least there was one. Councilman Bonds.
Question, do we know, has the federal government, the state government, CDC proposed closing businesses?
Well, here's what I'm gonna tell you. I believe that Governor Nolan, when she issued the executive order, did so and used very careful language that does not require that, and we could consistent with the advice she's getting from her Secretary of Health, the State Department of Health, and clearly from the CDC. Yeah.
Right. So no one has recommended that we close businesses.
Right, right. A lot of states have taken it upon themselves to do it from the top-down level, and we will have to see how that affects their state economies. Councilman?
Yeah,
Right,
member
Bill.
of the public would like to speak.
Nate?
Is that doable? Yeah, I was just asking.
I keep missing your hand.
Did you want to speak, Pete? Yeah. Just joking. Okay. Hi. Am I on? Hear me? Nate Kessler, VP of Lamont Companies, so we've got plenty of businesses, multiple locations in town that are really affected by this, and I guess the reason I wanted to just speak quick is just I saw you guys kind of going back and forth on Monday, you know, wanting maybe some more input or somebody here that, you know, is directly affected and can speak to laying off 207 people yesterday at Mavericks or DEC or whatever that looks like. And we're not in business, we're not open because we're making money today. We're open to pay employees and to keep those people that don't have jobs or benefits, not jobs, benefits or large salaries or whatever that looks like. They're living paycheck to paycheck in the hospitality world because we don't know what that mental health looks like when we lay them off, they can't pay their rent, all that stuff. So I just want to speak for all business owners that I know and that I've spoken to in the last couple of weeks, that just like you guys, this is tough times, and there's no playbook on this. We're in like 11 or 12 states, so I've been dealing with governors coming down Minnesota today with the move that he made, along with 2 weeks ago when he shut all of our convention centers and restaurants down. You know, we had food trucks coming in the back door, turning on the TV, and the governor shutting us down. So I do believe you guys are doing it right, and Governor Noem has done it right by allowing cities to do what they're doing. But, you know, nobody wants to make that call because it's a terrible decision. As a business, we are taking the health of our community first and foremost, and that's why we volunteered shut down our locations. That, you know, we've got some hotels open, but we've got some customers that need to stay and are here for working at 3 a.m. or whatever those specific reasons are that aren't, you know, our staffs are allowing the takeout and all that stuff to facilitate those people so that they do have the resources needed to eat and whatever else. But the health of our employees, I was watching you on Monday. As a business owner, we're not meaning to put them in jeopardy, obviously. Nobody has that when they're staying open mentality, right? You know, Mavericks were a little different out there because we've got 7 dining rooms and, you know, can space tons of space to get past that. And that's why we stayed open as long as we did. But at the end of the day, it was for the employee to collect a paycheck and to keep them as employed as long as we possibly could until a point where it's socially responsible to do the right thing and shut down. And I just feel that all business owners in the community should be able to make that decision rather easily, and hopefully it's not something you guys have to, you know, a class 2 or whatever felony or misdemeanor. I mean, that's craziness. Obviously, nobody wants to go down that route, but appreciate the time and the effort you're putting into this and being forthright. But I just leave one more point, and that's, you know, essentially the fact that the city's not paying our debt service. The city's not paying our property taxes that are due in a minute. The city's not paying our vendors that are screaming down our throats for, you know, being 60 days, whatever that looks like. So just be very cautious on how that process looks to reopen, because nobody here is qualified to speak when it's okay. You know, we can all look at numbers and see a decline, but ultimately that's the hard part, is when is it okay, and who's the, you know, subject to say, okay, go ahead and open again. And that's the part that I guess why I'm here is to make sure that it's in the business hands and they can do what they need to do. So by option 2 or 1, you know, I think that's the biggest bet for business owners is to make sure they can reopen as they feel needed and would, you know, be compliant with everything you're laying out. So glad I'm not in your shoes, but thank you for your efforts.
Thank you, Mr. Kessler. And I do think that that's a very important point to make, and I think that once we have solid evidence that our nation and or state are on the decline of the bell curve of this illness is the appropriate time to talk about reopening, because that's, I'm gonna say, entirely out of the forest, but it definitely means that we're in the clear. Councilman Johnson? Oh, go ahead, Vincent. You have a comment?
Can I speak?
Yeah, please.
I can just speak loud if that's okay, rather
And
than,
the people on
the microphone's already been touched, so. Am I loud enough? Okay. Thank you all for here. I would not want to be in your same position. I am a small business owner as well. I have a hair salon. I did close last week because I was in Washington DC, so I took my own option to close and self-quarantine at home. And when you're in Washington DC and you see a city drop to its knees within 4 days, and then you come here and you see kind of the nonchalantness of our community, because it hasn't really hit here, it's kind of scary to see. Because it's so small. What'd you say? We only have 4 cases now, and that's not gonna be the same in a week. And when I see these ordinances being passed, and I'm part of a group on Facebook for cosmetologists and salon owners and massage therapists who are all closing their business. I'm sorry, I'm too close to you. We're needing direction, because coming from Noam's office, she's saying it's not her responsibility to close businesses. Mayor Paul Tenhaken in Sioux Falls says it's not his job to close businesses, and it's not your job. But when you're supposed to be social distancing, and we're sitting here 6 feet apart, yet in my salon I have a person sitting within 6 inches of me, and I don't know if I should stay open or not. Of course, for me, I closed, but we need that direction to know it's the almighty dollar that always wins. I get it. We all want to pay our bills. But for the health of my clients and for the health of not just you who sits in my chair, but the person who sits in it after that person and after that person and the 8th person out of my day, and if you're above 70 years old and I didn't know that maybe I picked something up, what's going to happen now? So we need direction from somebody, and what we're being told is it's coming from local now. So not that I want all salons to be closed, because only a couple of us have closed our doors. And you cannot social distance. So if you're being told to social distance, that dollar bill is still in the back of people's minds, and they're not thinking about the health and the well-being of themselves and their clients. So I don't know what you can do to help with that, if anything at all, but we need help, because these females and male salon owners, they don't know what to do. You know, you feel like you should close.
I feel like there was an outreach effort among salon owners in the last day. I certainly got contacted by quite a lot, and I actually, is there an underlying message, I guess? It almost seems like you want us to tell you.
I think that's what it is. I think we need to be told just to close our doors. Because if we don't close now and we risk infecting people that we might not know or getting infected, if we start now, maybe this is going to be ending quicker compared to if we stay open, and then this is going to go into the middle of summer. And so having that definition of saying, because people aren't listening. People are still going to the bars, and you can sit by somebody next to you in a bar and tell them that it's your brother and that you've been quarantined with them. We all know that's a lie. They're going out, they're still doing things, they're being part of the public, and if we don't get told that we're supposed to do something, then these people are gonna still make excuses to come see us. Or they're gonna make excuses to still go to the bar because it's open. You know, so everybody wants to get out of the house. We're stir crazy after a whole entire winter.
I feel like you should remain closed.
For me, I am staying closed. I'm immune compromised, so I am staying closed. And my clients, I've been in business for 20 years. I'm blessed to have a husband who has an amazing job, who can work from home. I can live on one income. It sucks, but hey,
What
I
about
just.
the other hair salon operators?
What's that?
You just don't care about their income, or?
Well, I care about everybody's, but I also care about the health of our community, because I would probably bet some of these people in this room are above the age of 60, and probably a lot of the majority of our town's population is an older community. And once that spread keeps going, it's gonna take out, I think, more than 30%. So we're just needing direction, and then when it comes down to if we're being told, part of it always comes back to the money aspect. If we're not,
What was the definition? I totally forgot the word that was being used with everyone that contacted me.
some direction,
No, there was a word that everyone used, and I wish I could think of it right now, but it essentially means like I'd like a handout or some.
well, and that's what it comes down to is I have benefits, and yes, I don't wanna see all these other salons go out of business. But if you're not putting it in a mandate for us to close, if federal funding ever does come through, we don't get unemployment. 99% of the stylists in this town are all self-employed. So we pay extra in self-employment tax, yet we don't get unemployment if we have to close our doors for anything like this. And when you're not posting it and saying that you have to close, that it's up to our own, option to do so, then if federal funding did come available for us, we still wouldn't be eligible for it because you didn't mandate it for us.
Okay, so I wanna tell you, because I was a little bit suspect when everyone uses the same word to contact me, so I looked that word up, I checked out what Sioux Falls was saying and everyone else. And then I checked with the Governor's Office of Economic Development, who they said to reach out to. The gentleman that runs the Governor's Office of Economic Development in our part of the state, his name is Peters, he's a great young guy, and he informed me that it wouldn't make a difference if we forced you to close or not. The funding that they're referring to is SBA,
Which is a
emergency
loan,
funding.
which we don't want loans
Which is a
anyways, we're
loan,
small
right.
businesses, we don't need
And
any more debt.
He said they're flooded, they've got tons of them, there's no preference if someone's chosen or there was circumstances that otherwise. So I don't know, I feel very uncomfortable adding, additional types of businesses to this just so that they can get federal funding, but I don't think that federal funding is available. I checked with.
It's not yet, but I'm sure it will be, and if we're not listed, then we're still never gonna be eligible, we still don't get unemployment, we don't get anything. Unlike everybody else who can go to the services and get unemployment.
I'm self-employed, just
And-
to let you know.
So wouldn't you love to be eligible for
I
it?
would just assume the government not tell production monkeys, my graphic design business, to close. I feel like.
But you don't work 6 inches from a person or touch them all day long and don't know what kind of diseases, we've been trained in keeping things clean, but so was a physician who just came back and worked for 3 days with patients, and how many people did he infect with no symptoms? It's no different.
Yeah, I think
Than us.
for me, the other version doesn't even include hairstylists. This is more of a recreational, what they consider recreational businesses.
Yeah, 'cause I know
And
Colorado
so
and
some
Minnesota,
of
they've
the-
closed all of them.
Some of the, the problem is where do you stop with that?
I understand that,
You know, where do
it
you,
sucks.
what business do you tell, we closed down hairstylists, which I am not in favor of, but then, there's people that work at the grocery store that are in close proximity to people that are checking out, they're, we're not gonna close grocery stores.
Yeah.
So it gets to be really, it's unknown territory, and, I appreciate your comments. I feel for you, I feel for all the small businesses, I work with small businesses, and, it's just a terrible time.
So in your readings, could you explain to me then, if you're supposed to social distance according to CDC guidelines, how does,
I think it comes back to your personal responsibility. You've made the choice to, not be open because you know that you can't work in that environment. I haven't seen my mom, my aunt, for 3 weeks now because they're quarantined in nursing homes and assisted living areas. And I understand that aspect of, you have an elderly person that comes in, you just don't know what could happen to that person.
Yeah.
So I appreciate where you're coming from, but it's just a difficult decision for me to.
I think if we all followed the guidelines of social distancing, we wouldn't be
Yeah.
having this problem in the
Yeah.
first place.
Right. Yeah.
But that's why we're all stuck in this,
Right.
quandary of what do we do
Mhm.
and what's right.
Councilman Ronan.
If I
Thank
may,
you for your time.
with all due respect, I think under this version, you are closed down. Any enclosed retail business that promotes public gatherings shall implement procedures to ensure social distancing, there's no way you can do that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And so in my conversations with people in your business today, it was my opinion that you are not going to be permitted to operate under this ordinance. And
City ordinance or that state?
this proposed, the proposed ordinance we are looking at today, I think it's.
Similar
prohibits
place for
that type
public
of-
gathering is where you're.
Hold on.
I'm at the end of
Read this.
paragraph one. Any enclosed retail business that promotes public gatherings shall implement procedures to ensure social distancing.
I think that's the most ethical way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I seem oddly prepared for hairstylists being closed. And like I say, I kind of agree with Rob, you know, it's gonna be difficult for someone to cut their hair from 6 feet away and maintain a proper social distancing. I think it's gonna be difficult for a lot of casinos to stay open. I'm in a lot of them are small, machines close together. They're gonna have 2-3 machines operating if they're lucky. Some of the bigger establishments could spread it out, but this, you know, there may be some bars, but how do you get a bar if it's not a family unit? You know, and you can't have 2 friends sitting next to each other enjoying a drink. You know, under this, they have to be from the same family unit, and of course, there's gonna be people that don't tell the truth, but it's gonna be difficult for a lot of businesses to operate even under this model. Mavericks might still be able to go on, because again, you have 7 dining rooms, you can space people, you can limit the number of people inside. But some of those bigger establishments might, franchises have more computer backup through curbside, online ordering, you name it. But I think there's gonna be a lot of businesses that will find it hard to operate, even under the guidelines of version 2.
Councilman Wright.
Going back to what Nate Kessler talked about, it's difficult, I think it's very difficult for these businesses to make the decision to close their door, because we all know what that means. People aren't gonna be receiving paychecks, and very difficult on people. But ultimately, they made the decision to close the doors. And what we're saying here, I don't think any of us foresee this lasting 6 months or something. I look at this as hopefully a very temporary situation. When I say temporary, I'm hoping it's less than a month. I don't know what's gonna happen, none of us do, but I think we all hope for this to be short-lived rather than long-lived. And I think the way to make this short-lived is to come at it aggressively off the bat. I can support version 2. I can support either version. We need to get something out there to give people more guidance. But my only concern, and I'll just state it again, is if we don't do enough initially, we could be doing a little for a very long time. If we can do a lot initially to stop it, we might be out of the woods a little sooner than if we allow, and I hate even using the term allow people to stay open, because that's not, this makes me feel really uncomfortable. But these times are unique, and I think if we can do something strong for a short period of time, it may benefit us in the long run. But like I said, if version 2 is the version we land on, I will wholeheartedly support it. But we also have to make sure the community understands how important it is that we follow these guidelines. And if we don't, we're gonna come back to it and potentially make it stricter. And I think that needs to be known. Not because we're anti-business or we wanna shut anybody down or want people to lose their jobs, it's we want the community to be safe. And I think ultimately we can't do that from our seats. It's gonna take the community to do that and to make those difficult decisions. If you're a salon owner and you decide to close, or if you're a bar or a restaurant and you decide to close, and you think that's what's best for your employees, we all support you making those decisions. But it's gonna take the whole community to come together to get over this. And so either version we pass, I'm fine with. But I just know that it doesn't take very many people not following the rules on this to ruin it for everybody who is following the rules. And I don't wanna be the guy walking around town, giving people class 2 misdemeanors either. But we just need to get the message out there that this is something that is really important for our community. And let's voluntarily do as much as we possibly can to fight this.
I think a lot of people in this community continue to do the right thing, have been doing the right thing from the beginning, have been trying to do everything that they can to affect their circle of people and those around them. So, and I want to applaud people in the community. And it's not that I don't feel bad for your situation. I know that it was a difficult decision to close your business, and you're fortunate to have that second source of income. And I literally checked with the guys that were told are doling out the gatekeepers this money, and they said it's irrelevant.
Hopefully that changes.
What's that?
I said hopefully that changes, coming from federal, that, you know, more will be given to small businesses who have to make this decision. I mean, it's a changing, every day it's new, so hopefully it changes.
Right, but I want to take our heel off the throat of the businesses of this community in every way, shape, and form. The last thing I think we should be doing is inventing new businesses. It was a responsible decision of you if you felt like you were contributing to the problem, potentially. But I hate to have someone make that decision for an entire sector of people hoping that they get federal funds in the future. Nate?
One last thing, the city of Deadwood today, shut our operations down with not an ordinance, because they didn't wanna go the ordinance route because of the 5-day period, and they wanted to go the resolution route. Don't you guys have the power, if you don't see the business owners doing what they're supposed to be doing, enact a resolution that as of 5 o'clock today, you can make those situations known, or is that not how Aberdeen code works?
There was a roundtable with the various municipal attorneys throughout the state on the difference between a resolution and an ordinance, and where the effect of an ordinance is essentially to shut a business down, that can be determined to be an inverse condemnation, is what it's called, but it's a taking of some sort. Or where the effect of the council's action would be to order the shutdown of a business, that would be a taking. If that is done pursuant to the ordinance process, that protects the city, as it should. It formalizes the process and gives you the protection for taking the measures that were needed in a public health emergency, and did so by ordinance. A resolution doesn't give you that same protection, doesn't give this council that protection. That's why I have, from the beginning, have been pushing you on the ordinance track.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you for the suggestion. Nate, does anyone else have anything to add before we take our vote on ordinance 2303, COVID-19 emergency ordinance number 1?
Roll call vote, please. Would that be acceptable?
It's an ordinance, has to be roll call.
Oh, it does, I'm
Carl?
sorry.
Go ahead and give me a roll call vote. And we're speaking in terms of version 2, following governor's executive order, just to be clear.
Councilmember Renly,
Abstain.
Ronayne,
Yes.
Lensman,
Yes.
Wright,
Yes.
Johnson,
Aye.
Bunceness,
Aye.
Olson,
No.
Rux,
Aye.
Mayor Shonman.
Aye. Motion does carry. We will reconvene on this next week. Councilman Bunceness.
I agree with Councilmember Rife in the terms of good communication with our public. And I got some feedback today from an employee that was pleased with the mayor of Sioux Falls. They're getting information on a daily basis, and I think they were pleased with your post today regarding. What I'm asking for is, can we have communication to our public on a daily basis? It can come from the mayor, it can come from the people that have been appointed at the Brown County emergency management, as the communication officers.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to step up my game. In fact, I normally am able to respond to people very, very quickly, and in this case, I've just been inundated with dozens, if not.
Understand, but, you know, I mean, is there also other ways that we can communicate through, other than just Facebook? I mean, is there other avenues? You know, that's your profession, so I would encourage us to be communicating
That's
as
a good
much
idea.
as we can.
In fact, Lynn and I have been having some conversations about a new public access channel situation, right?
It'll
Getting all
be too
this-
late by the end of this, but yes, we have talked about that.
Would the mayor please call a special meeting for Wednesday, April 1, for consideration of second reading of this ordinance?
We'll call a meeting for April 1st, 2020, for the potential second reading of this ordinance. Anything else?
5:30?
Oh, 5:30, I guess, unless anyone has a conflict with that timing.
Mayor, another housekeeping matter, I was gonna ask that, so I'm glad the special meeting was requested. We do need to do the first reading. So we'll need to verbally read this.
Oh, is that a Ron thing or a Travis thing?
It could be the clerk, the mayor, or
It'd be better if it wasn't.
For another housekeeping measure, if in fact you're gonna meet Wednesday at 5:30, you need to go in and change the effective date on this ordinance too.
We did that.
correct, all the dates that you're seeing up there in brackets, those will be adjusted now. Pretend they're not there, we'll put in the correct dates, in light of what's happened tonight. You want me to read that, Carl?
I certainly can read it.
Is that okay? I'll use my best bedtime reading voice. An emergency ordinance to address a public health crisis by implementing certain measures which have been deemed necessary to slow the community spread of the virus responsible for the COVID-19 disease. Whereas the city of Aberdeen has the authority pursuant to SDCL sections 929.1 and 932.1 to adopt ordinances for the purpose of promoting the health, safety, and general welfare of the community, and to do what may be necessary or expedient for the promotion of health or the suppression of disease. And whereas the city council pursuant to Aberdeen City Charter section 214 may adopt an emergency ordinance affecting life, health, property, or the public peace by an affirmative vote of at least 60% of the members present, which ordinance shall automatically stand repealed as of the 61st day following the date on which it was adopted. And whereas an outbreak of the COVID-19 disease, which is caused by the novel coronavirus SARS-CoV-2, the virus, has been confirmed in more than 100 countries, including the United States. And whereas COVID-19 is a severe respiratory disease caused by the virus transmitted by person-to-person contact or by contact with surfaces contaminated by the virus. In some cases, especially among older adults and persons with serious underlying health conditions, virus infection can result in serious illness requiring hospitalization, admission to an intensive care unit, and death. And whereas the World Health Organization, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services have declared the outbreak of the virus causing the COVID-19 disease a public health emergency. And whereas on March 13, 2020, President Donald Trump declared a national emergency in response to the global pandemic of COVID-19, and whereas on the same day, Governor Kristi Noem issued Executive Order 2020-04, declaring a state of emergency in the state of South Dakota due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas cases of infection from the virus causing the COVID-19 disease have been confirmed in the state of South Dakota, including one confirmed case in Brown County, and cases of community spread are reasonably suspected to exist. And whereas the CDC and health experts have concluded that social distancing is necessary to slow the spread of the virus causing the COVID-19 disease, and whereas social distancing is a method of slowing down or stopping the spread of contagious disease by reducing the probability of contact between infected persons and those not infected in order to minimize disease transmission. And whereas the CDC issued guidance to state and local governments and all citizens recommending social distancing steps to prevent community spread and guard against the COVID-19 outbreak. And whereas many states and communities across the country implemented the CDC recommendations by ordering the closure of bars, restaurants, food courts, gyms, and other indoor and outdoor venues where people congregate until the public health emergency is over. And whereas many Aberdeen residents, healthcare organizations, businesses, and religious organizations voluntarily instituted social distancing measures recommended by the CDC, but social distancing is not being practiced by all persons within the city. And whereas the failure to successfully implement social distancing will likely result in higher numbers of infected individuals and has the potential to overwhelm the capacity of the city's healthcare providers. And whereas it is important that control measures be taken to reduce or slow the spread of the virus in order to protect the health and safety of the city's residents, especially seniors and those with underlying health conditions that make them particularly vulnerable to the COVID-19 disease. And whereas, consistent with the CDC guidance, Governor Nome issued Executive Order 2020-08 on March 23rd, 2020, providing social distancing directives to every South Dakotan, any enclosed retail business that promotes social gatherings, all employers, all healthcare organizations, and all local and municipal governments. And whereas the City Council, exercising its authority pursuant to Aberdeen City Charter Section 2.14, finds that the rules and regulations contained within this ordinance are necessary for the prevention and spread of the contagious virus causing the deadly COVID-19 disease within the city of Aberdeen. Be it ordained by the City of Aberdeen as follows. Number one, effective 12:01 a.m. on April 2nd, 2020, any enclosed retail business operating as a bar, restaurant, brewery, cafe, casino, coffee shop, recreational or athletic facility, health club, entertainment venue, or other similar place for public gatherings shall A, not permit 10 or more people to be in the enclosed facility where there is not sufficient space to have physical separation of at least 6 feet between persons who are not immediate family members or members of the same household, and B, discontinue business practices incompatible with CDC hygiene practices designed to reduce the likelihood of spreading the COVID-19 disease. These businesses are encouraged to adopt and promote practices that do not involve public gatherings in an enclosed space, including but not limited to takeout, delivery, drive-through, curbside service, and off-site services. Any enclosed retail business that promotes public gatherings shall implement procedures to ensure social distancing and operate in compliance with federal and state health guidance in order to prevent the spread of the COVID-19 disease. These businesses may submit such procedures to the city health officer for review. Number two, effective 12:01 a.m. on April 2nd, 2020, any public gathering of 10 or more people is prohibited. A, where there is not sufficient space to have physical separation of at least 6 feet between persons who are not immediate family members or members of the same household. Or B, where CDC hygiene practices to reduce the likelihood of spreading the COVID-19 disease are not maintained. Number three, the prohibitions in this order do not apply to the following. A, places of public accommodation that offer food and beverages for off-site consumption, including grocery stores, markets, retail stores that offer food, convenience stores, pharmacies, drug stores, and food pantries, other than any portion of such business which would be subject to the requirements of paragraph 1. B, room service in hotels. C, healthcare facilities, residential care facilities, congregate care facilities, licensed daycares, and correctional facilities. D, crisis shelters, homeless shelters, churches, soup kitchens, or other similar institutions. E, any emergency facility necessary for the response to the current public health emergency or any other community emergency or disaster. Be it further ordained that this ordinance shall be repealed on the day following each regular or special meeting of the City Council, unless the City Council at such regular or special meeting, by resolution approved by a majority of the members present, affirms 1, the continued existence of the public health emergency, and 2, the necessity of the social distancing measures set forth in paragraphs 1 through 2 above, and extends the ordinance for the day following the next regular or special meeting of the City Council. This ordinance shall be subject to recurrent defermences by a resolution and extended thereafter, but in no event may this ordinance be extended beyond 60 days from the effective date, and shall be automatically repealed on the 61st day without further action of the City Council. Nothing herein shall be construed to prevent the City Council from adopting another ordinance necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, or safety in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Be it further ordained that a violation of this ordinance shall be a Class 2 misdemeanor. Each day a violation of this ordinance occurs is considered a separate offense. Be it further ordained that pursuant to SDCL Section 9-19-13, this ordinance is necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, or safety, and shall become effective immediately upon passage. Travis Schauman, Mayor.
Thank you, Ron, good reading. We have nothing further, I will accept the motion to adjourn this meeting.
Move.
Second.
Motion from Munson, and a second from Johnson, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you, guys, see you on Monday.